start a little.
I guess. Are you going to ask any questions, or am I just going to talk?
Well, we're going to get you started. My name is David Lowance, and it's D-Day, June the 6th, 2005, and we're at the Atlanta History Center as part of the World War II Veterans History Project. And we're honored today to have Mr. Wiley Shackelford Obenshain and his wife Marilyn with us to talk about his experiences in World War II. Mr. Obenshain is a native of North Carolina, a graduate of Duke University. He's going to talk to us about what it was like growing up during the 20s and 30s and being in school, his attitude toward the war in Europe at that time, where he was on Pearl Harbor Day, and how he got involved in the military, and about his experiences in the Navy and the Pacific. Mr. Obenshain, we appreciate you being here, and turn it over to you to start talking about things you remember and partially remember.
Well, I'll start off with the December the 7th, 1941. I was a senior at Duke University, and we walked out of the chapel that Sunday at 12 o'clock and got the news that Pearl Harbor had just been attacked. And the following day I volunteered for the Navy and was allowed to continue my schooling for the next 4 or 5 months until I graduated in late May. And then I was sent to Chicago to Abbott Hall as a 90-day wonder. I guess first I was sent to midshipman school for 2 or 3 weeks at Notre Dame, and then from there I went to Abbott Hall in Chicago on the lake. And after 90 days I was commissioned ensign, as a matter of fact, on my 22nd birthday. And I was sent to San Diego to torpedo school before being sent to the South Pacific. I sailed on a cruiser called the Matsonia from San Francisco to Noumea, New Caledonia. And I was then transported by a destroyer to Guadalcanal, where the Buchanan that I was assigned to was on duty. The Guadalcanal had just been secured a few days before I arrived. I don't imagine it was because of my arrival, but at any rate, things were much quieter. We were bombed practically every night. They called it the shuttle. The Japanese flyers would come down just about dark every evening and bomb us. It was very convenient because we knew what time they were coming down and what time they were leaving, so we worked our schedule around them. We started moving north from Guadalcanal shortly afterwards, and we were involved in the Battle of Tula Gulf, in which a number of our ships were damaged, not only by the Japanese but by our own fleet, because we were racing around sort of out of control, but we did win the battle. Probably the most interesting experience we had in those days was we went up to Ribal, went up the channel, what we thought was a suicide mission, and shelled the capital city, fired torpedoes in the harbor, and sank several ships, and started down the channel, thinking by then they would know where we were and would start firing at us. And they never figured out that we were a ship. They assumed we were in a plane, so they continued to fire in the sky and never fired at us. So much to our relief, we arrived safely back outside the channel.
Did they have night radar or anything at that time, or was it just by visualization, surface visualization?
Radar was very primitive in those days. On both sides, it was practically non-existent. There was radar existing, but
No.
it was not effective. As I say, someone asked me recently at a party what my home base was, and I said, our home base was wherever we were. We were moving against the Japanese, and we didn't come back to anything. We just kept going west. At some later date, we were involved in the invasion of Palau, islands of Palau, not too far above the Philippines. We were patrolled off the Philippines, off Luzon, and as Halsey said in his message to us, where we turned and headed to the Philippines, I can't even pronounce it. Mindanao Gulf, I guess it is now a bloody battlefield. So the fleet moved down there to protect the troops that were on the shore. After Palau, we headed north and for fueling, and the Third Fleet, and we were practically out of fuel, all of us, and a typhoon hit us. 3 of the destroyers in my squadron were lost in the first several hours, and we never heard from them again. Everyone disappeared. Later on, a number of the sailors were recovered by another ship, but we couldn't see anyone around us, and because of the strength of the typhoon, the water was for about 6 inches above. The water was spray that was poured at the length, at full length of the typhoon, full strength of the typhoon. So most people drowned even if they were able to be above water. But that was the worst thing that happened to the typhoon. Of course, all the big ships were safe. And then finally we had to pump seawater into the tanks so we would have enough ballast to last out the typhoon. We moved north against Iwo Jima, and at that point I was ordered back to the States for the commissioning of a new ship. So I was not in the South Pacific past Guam, not at Iwo Jima. And I was in the States commissioning a new ship when the war ended in Europe. And then at the time our new ship was commissioned, the war ended in the Pacific. So I was out there 2 different times, but I was not there at the end of the war.
What was when you first went over there to Guadalcanal? I mean, nobody here had ever heard of Guadalcanal before, and all of a sudden it was on the headlines every day. And you were stationed offshore, and all of a sudden you had Japanese bombers on their express coming down to bomb you every night. Were you scared, or just assumed they were going to miss you, or?
Well, as a matter of fact, we pretty well assumed they were going to miss us, because at that stage they didn't seem to be hitting anybody. They were more on the run, and it was a routine thing they did. So they rarely hit anybody. They came close, but none of the ships around us were ever hit. We were hit, of course, in the Battle of Kula Gulf, and and other conflicts with them, but no one on my ship was killed at that stage.
I've never been shot at, so I can't even imagine what my fear would be, like when you went into Rabaul to torpedo the ships on shore. Were you scared at any time, or?
Yes, we were all scared to death because we really thought it was a suicide mission, and it never occurred to us that they would not realize that we were a ship. So there wasn't anybody aboard that wasn't scared.
No.
But then even when we turned after we had launched all our torpedoes and fired into the harbor, we still, until we got out of the long channel, which was probably 90 miles long, we thought someone would come out and see us, but no one ever did.
When you went into the typhoon, you obviously didn't know you were going into a typhoon. It just happened upon you, I would assume.
It did.
How long did it take you to realize you were in real trouble?
Well, it didn't take but a few minutes. I had to jettison the torpedoes, and we jettisoned everything on deck that we could get rid of. We rolled for 67 degrees, which is not supposed to be possible, and then come back, but we rolled and came back. But as I said earlier, 3 of our ships didn't come back.
Were men lost overboard from your ship during the typhoon? How in the world did you secure people with that degree of list to roll, not to?
Well, of course, we had ropes that had been strung along the railings, and we all had on life jackets, and we never moved without holding on to something. No one was out on the open deck. We would go from one door to another door and hold on to the bulkhead of the ship. But it was scary.
And you would jettison the torpedoes from inside, outside. You didn't have to go out on deck in order to.
Well, I said no one was out on deck. The torpedoes, of course, were outside, but so we did have to go out to jettison the torpedoes.
But you had safety ropes on, harnesses.
We were rigged up in every direction.
Is that when your ship got the presidential citation because of that?
Now, the presidential citation was awarded to the ship in Pearl Harbor for, all the battle stars that had taken place, all the battles that the ship had been in before that. I think the Buchanan had the highest number next to the highest number of battle stars of all destroyers. There were 15 battle stars for the Buchanan. I think one other ship had 17, and one cruiser, I think, had 19. But we were one of the highest battle star ships in the South Pacific.
You came home before the kamikaze raids started coming, or did they come while you were still?
Oh, they were there all around us. See, actually, most of our duty was meeting jeep carriers, escorting the jeep carriers that were loaded with planes to replace all the planes that were lost off the main carriers. And there were kamikazes all around because we were with the main fleet at that time, and they were hitting everything they could. They were hitting the jeep carriers and the main carriers. But being a destroyer and moving fast, we were lucky. I mean, we were machine gunned, but we were never hit by a kamikaze. We were almost hit by a kamikaze, but they never hit us.
You never lost any men on your ship during their you were there for roughly 2 years, is that correct?
I was there the first time for I was there about 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Never lost a man on the ship. We had one officer wounded just by shrapnel, but no one was killed.
Did you go down to Australia after Guadalcanal with
Yes,
the
sir.
Marine divisions when the Australian women were liberated by the American soldiers?
Well, we went to Australia, to Sydney, on 2 different occasions for R&R, recreation, for a week at a time. But, see, what was liberated in Australia was Western Australia, so we would have our R&R in Sydney and Eastern Australia. So we didn't see any conflict in Australia.
What was your sojourn on the islands like? Did you put into any of the ports where you had liberated the islands, or did you?
I think my wife has cards from every officer's club in the Pacific, from Tulagi to Guadalcanal to New Caledonia.
The Iron Bottom Bay Club,
Let's see those.
Liffey, David,
Ulithi was the great secret port that was nothing at all but a reef around the ships.
That's a card from the Iron Bottom Bay Club. That's got to be at Guadalcanal.
Right.
Is it Ulithi
Ulithi.
Lagoon?
Ulithi was just a amazing harbor inside a reef.
Espirito Santo.
Espirito Santo.
You've been, I think you did more than you want to tell us you did. And we're not gonna press the point, but there. There are a lot of cards there.
We did go ashore every now and then.
what was the Order of the Golden Dragon? Who was that?
I don't know. But when we approached the harbor, Ulithi, which was nothing at all but a coral reef, and there were 500 ships, and all you could see were the masts, but you could see no land because there was no land. There was just the sand on the
Yeah.
coral reef.
Lieutenant J.G. with the Ancient Order of the Deep.
Oh, that's when I guess it's when I crossed the equator.
Equator is what that was for. What was your feeling about when you heard that Roosevelt had died? You were back in the United States at that time?
I was. As a matter of fact, I was in Washington. Well, I think everyone knew that he was close to death. His death wasn't so much of a shock, it was who replaced him that was the great shock. Because no one in those days had much opinion of Harry Truman, but that changed pretty drastically. Everyone's opinion rose rapidly at Harry Truman. At the day of Roosevelt's death, it was not very high.
He had to make a lot of hard decisions
He certainly did.
without much time to do his homework, and had not been kept up abreast of everything that was going on.
That was the main thing. He wasn't kept abreast.
Did you know any of the people who took care of Roosevelt down at Warm Springs?
No, I didn't.
Dr. J. Edgar Paulin, who practiced at Piedmont Hospital, was one of the physicians who went down to take care of him when he passed away. Where were you when you heard about the atomic bomb being dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Do you remember that?
I guess I was at Old Point Comfort, Virginia, commissioning the new ship, new destroyer. In fact, that's where I was.
What was your reaction to hearing the atomic bomb had been dropped?
Relief, great relief. I knew the war was over then, that we wouldn't be, our new ship wouldn't be going back to the Pacific.
How long did you stay in the service after the end of the war?
I got out almost immediately. I had enough overseas time. I got out in November of that year of 45.
What events do you recall from World War II that stand out in your mind, other than the typhoon? Any humorous events that happened to you that?
Well, right off the top of my head, I can't come up with any humorous events. But, it was not all unpleasant. I mean, we had a good crew, and as I say, we went to Australia twice on leave, and we did enjoy the officers' clubs on the various islands. My Captain Myers, was always good at taking me along with him when he first left the ship to get ahead of the tying up at the dock when we went into officers' clubs.
Any specific sadnesses that you recall from World War II, close friends who were lost, or?
Well, since we lost no one on the ship, we didn't have any first-hand experience with,
No.
With death or with injury, really, except for that one officer who was not seriously injured. But,
You've seen a lot of your men since.
pardon?
You've seen a lot of your men in the last several years at reunions. with
Oh,
destroyers.
yeah. Yeah, we've had reunions through the years. In fact, we just talked to the Admiral's wife Sunday. She's celebrating her 101st birthday.
Well, is that right?
But, her husband died many years ago. He was the admiral. He was the captain of my ship during the rough days of Guadalcanal. He had just been replaced by Captain Myers when I arrived on the ship in February of 43, and he ultimately became an admiral and hosted a reunion.
I think the cruiser Atlanta was lost at Guadalcanal, if I'm not mistaken.
I can't answer
Yeah,
that.
I think it was.
I didn't mention that the Buchanan was named after a Confederate admiral.
Oh, is that right?
Admiral Franklin Buchanan. His naval career covered over 50 years, from midshipman in 1814 to admiral by the end of the Civil War.
And he was an admiral in the
Confederate.
Confederacy.
That's a picture of him there.
This will be something for the. I can tell you, Wiley, you look better than he does.
I don't believe that's saying much.
The December the 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. Did you have any feelings about the United States involvement in war in Europe prior to that time, or was it just a wake-up call?
Well, I had felt for a long time that we needed to be involved, that we had to be involved, otherwise the war would never be won. So I think your expression of a wake-up call is what it was. Pearl Harbor woke us up. I'll never forget the expression of an admiral in the Japanese Navy when he said, "I'm afraid we've awakened a sleeping giant."
No.
And of course, that's what happened.
I think that was Yamamoto who said that.
Yeah.
But I think prior to December the 7th, still the majority of the people in the United States were isolationists in their feelings about the war.
That's true. I wasn't, but I think most people were.
Most of the people were.
That's why Roosevelt did his Lend-Lease, sent the old destroyers over. He used every excuse he could to help, but, and not be in the war.
December the 7th, 1941 was an invasion of the United States, but it was in Hawaii. September the 11th, 2001 was an invasion of the United States here in New York City. Do you have any thoughts about the mood of the country, the way it swayed after Pearl Harbor compared to the way it swayed after 9/11?
Well, I think it was similar. I think we suddenly realized after September the 11th that we were at war again. We were invaded, and somehow or other we would have to fight back. And we have.
I think both times it drew everybody together.
Marilyn, I'm gonna get a picture of you, so I know you didn't plan on being photographed today, but I wanna get a picture of you over there, so we got you.
I didn't even know I was being photographed.
But both times, as I say, I think it pulled us all together as a nation. Everybody.
What do you remember about the war years? Were you in the service at all, or Rosie the Riveter or anything?
No,
She was just a
I
child.
bought war bond stamps at school. That's the only thing I remember, and I remember rationing. And my mother was very active with the
Yeah.
Gray Ladies, the Red Cross in Chicago. But,
Did you have blackout drills?
yes, we did.
Yeah, we had them here in Atlanta, I remember those,
Right.
as a little boy growing up here in Atlanta.
We did. But, the war was pretty much over by the time I started college. Well, I mean, yes, in Japan.
Right,
I remember that probably almost more than the war being over in Europe, because I had just started my freshman year at college. I mean, I was in college my freshman year, and there was so much commotion on campus. Everybody's so thankful it was over.
where were you in college?
In Wellesley, Massachusetts, at Pine Manor College.
At Pine Manor, I know Pine Manor.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna tell you what I remember about Pine Manor.
But one thing I did want to say that this Admiral Franklin Buchanan, he was one of the founders of Annapolis.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, right,
For whom the destroyer is named.
right, exactly,
Goodness gracious, isn't that something?
it is.
Wiley, any other thoughts or remembrances that you'd like to record or have recorded?
No, I can't think of any.
Any lessons that you think we need to take from World War II?
Well, I think we need to be ready
Yes,
at all times. And sometimes we're not. I think the main lesson was always be ready.
are you disappointed at all in some of the dissension that you hear about supporting our troops over in the Middle East now?
Oh yes, I certainly am. I think we have to be there and we have to win
Yes.
before we can come home.
Well, on behalf of myself and my generation, people like you made it possible for me to go to Miss Bloodworth's kindergarten at the corner of Peachtree Battle and Peachtree, and to go to E River School during World War II. And there's no way that somebody like myself can express the gratitude that I have for the sacrifice that you were willing to make and that a lot of your generation made so that the rest of us could grow up in a free society. And we thank you.
I was glad to do it.
We appreciate very much your being willing to do so. Thank you so much.